Today, I just wanted to interact and have some Q&A with you guys about the energies you're feeling right now, what ascension is, if you're not sure what spiritual ascension is, or a spiritual awakening, and just any other questions that you guys have. And I don't have all of the answers, but I can try my best, and collectively in this group, maybe we can answer some questions that we have. Let's start some Q&A. Let's just see where this goes. So, for those of you who have prepared questions, I'm here. For those of you who just want to go off the cuff, I'm here.
It describes to us ascension and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please don't be afraid to talk.
That's all right. I was just
Okay.
sort of waking up.
Okay, that's okay. So ascension, in my eyes, and many people's eyes, is something that we used to feel. Well, let's break down what ascension is. Ascension means you're moving up. You're going up. That's what ascend means. You're moving up, okay? Now, depending on, first of all, I'm going to talk about religion and all sorts of things. And please, I mean no offense at all. I grew up in a very Christian household, and I still very much honor the Bible. I still believe in God, source, but with your God of your own unique understanding. Let's all just kind of put that out there. But in the Bible, so to speak, there's a generalized thought that when you ascend, you die. You go up through the heavens, and you're ascending that way, right? So spiritual ascension is a little bit different. It's more so the opposite of what we've maybe been taught. And Beth and I talk about this all the time. I don't know if you guys ever watch TV. What's that show called Beth that the Upside Down is in?
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things. There's a really popular show right now called Stranger Things. And I only watched it briefly because of this. There was some spiritual context in this show. And I do believe that artists, musicians, directors are starting to throw in these concepts of awakening into their material. So I wanted to kind of see what this was about. And in this show, they talk about this other world called the Upside Down. And even though in the show, the Upside Down seems like a very scary place, when I started to go through my awakenings on a deeper, more refined level, I started to very simply say that to myself. I was like, oh wait, hold on. I can figure this out. We just have to think about it upside down. We have to just flip it. We have to flip our line of thinking. So instead of us ascending, dying, and so to speak, dying as a means of ascending, how I see it is it's just more in the level of consciousness and awareness, and you're just literally moving up in your awareness of your own consciousness. It's like you're moving up a level. Think about like back in the day when we played video games, or your kid played video games. You're getting to the next level. That's how it kind of feels to me consciously, like you're ascending up in your consciousness. You're bringing in more awareness, you're opening up doorways, and you're seeing more. Your consciousness is elevating. Now on this journey of ascension in consciousness, what you're actually meant to do then is to instead move up into heaven in your ascension process. You're meant to have glimpses of what heaven is and pull it down onto earth. Okay, so again, there's that upside down. It's not like you don't have to just go to heaven to ascend and be at peace and be happy. It is now available right now on the planet where these energies and this consciousness, there's mass awakenings happening all over the world right now. And the availability is, you can start to deprogram yourself from limiting beliefs, and you can start to ascend in your consciousness and see that it is all available for you now. You can actually get those glimpses of unconditional love and peace and your purpose and fulfillment and your passion, and get rid of anything that's holding you back, which is the process, the journey, and pull those elements of heaven back down onto earth so you can live to be not only in fulfillment in your own life, but a real beacon of hope for other people to say, hey, look, I can help you cut through all of these blockages and all of these blocks and all of this conditioning that you've been taught and trained, and you can get heaven on earth. You can have the most fulfilling, purposeful life that you came here to live if you just continue to ascend in your consciousness. So that's how I would really basically sum up, in my eyes, what spiritual ascension is. Again, it's projection and perception. A lot of people right away, you say ascension, people are like, oh, what, do I have to die? I don't know. I don't think I want to go into that. I don't know. Like, I'm scared of that. What does that mean? So words are just, they're how we communicate, their language, but there's so much more beyond the words. There's so much more, and people have perceptions and attachments to specific words. You know, there are some words you could just say one thing and 20 different people could have 20 different emotions about that one particular word. So that's why we have to be very cautious, I think, when talking about this stuff, because how do we teach people that there's nothing to be scared about when we talk about spiritual ascension or ascension? How do we communicate this in language terms where people aren't going to buy into their projection and just block themselves from really finding their highest purpose? Another thing that Beth and I talk about a lot is how many people out there are on this journey? How many people out there are awakening? How many people are recognizing that they can have heaven on earth right now? Because I tend to put stuff out in the world, and a lot of times, depending on what it is and how we language it, there can be smaller outturns, sometimes there can be bigger outturns with people. But we often talk about, is it the languaging that's scaring people away? Do we say, hey, ascension energies, you know, this and that, and then people are like, whoa, I don't know what she's talking about, or that doesn't really resonate with me. When in fact, everybody wants to be happy, everybody wants to find their purpose, everybody wants to feel this unconditional love. So how do you take this and language it in a way that's gonna really not scare people, right? So does that make any better sense to you as far as ascension, spiritual ascension?
So one thing I just wanted to add is
Please.
just that, I mean, it's difficult to understand it from a physical point of view, you know, ascension, you know, we're accustomed or conditioned or programmed to whatever word you use, to believe that, you know, as you were saying in the beginning, you know, you're born, you live your life, time comes, I mean, you die, physically speaking, but I mean, there's a different, other aspect of our lives, of our beings, which is, you know, the spiritual or the energetic, the unseen, you know, that nobody tells us, nobody is taught in our schools, unless, you know, you have some sort of religious background where, you know, talk about the spirit, the Holy Ghost, and stuff like that, stuff that's you cannot see, you cannot perceive with your eye, you can feel it in your heart, you can see it in your mind. But nobody talks to us about this, so we have no way of developing this from our childhood and growing up. So session is more of a, energetically speaking, you know, you raising your energy up, you know, closer to, you know, whatever is next. You know, obviously the ultimate goal is to get closer to God,
Right.
or source, or whatever, however you want to word that. But you know, it's not a, you know, a physical, you know. I mean, there's nothing you can do to this body except maybe, like, you know, take better care of it as far as the session goes. But I mean, when it comes to, like, you know, energetically speaking, you're just raising your vibrations, if you will. I mean, that's like a whole other topic there. But you know, it's from the unseen point of view, you know, where by feeling vision of love and service to other people, obviously as well as yourself. As Jesus said, you know, respect yourself and do the same for others, you know, but it starts with yourself first.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you sort of, once you learn to do it for yourself, then you can incorporate it into how you interact with other people, you know, and that's probably the most important part, because bringing heaven on earth, as from my understanding, you know, as Stephanie was saying, it's just, I mean, that's a purpose for everyone here on this planet, you know, that's, you know, we're a conduit of heavenly energy, if you will, or divine energy, you know, bringing to this planet. So, you know, then that way we can help this planet, obviously, with so much need, because if it wasn't for it, we would not be here. And you know, so it's in that aspect, you know, that ascension occurs, as far as, like, from my understanding, is where you let go of whatever has been conditioned to your being, you know, through schooling or family or social circles that you have, and expand as far as you can, you know, and that is what ascension is, you know, and including everyone, you know, being inclusive instead of being exclusive, you know, instead of saying, oh, you know, that person is that or this, and you just say, oh, I see myself in the person, you know, that's kind of like what ascension is. I mean, we can only recognize things that we know, so when we see something in the person that we don't like, it's because we see that in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
we have seed, meaning like we feel it, we notice in ourselves, and that's how we can recognize in other people. So ascension would be like, oh, the person is just like me, or I'm just like that, instead of saying like, oh, the person is this or is that, or whatever. So, you know, that kind of, you know, that expands your energy field in a way, your spirit, you know, and that's what ascension is. So it's not like, you know, a process of, you know, because a lot of people get, you know, as you were saying, like with wording, it's like, oh, ascension, oh, what a big word, you know, where's it going to take me, what am I going to do, you know, what do I have to do, you know, I have to start eating vegan food, and, you know, doing this, which is, you know, important, it helps, obviously, you know, all this kind of stuff, but you know, plainly speaking, you know, it's very, it's, you know, just everyday life, you wake up in the morning and you're happy to be alive, you know, you have a nice hot breakfast, and you're like, oh, it tastes so good, I'm so grateful, that's ascension, you know, instead of being like, oh, I wish I had bacon with my food, and you're like, oh, this is just perfect right now, you know, and then, you know, that's from my perspective, you know, that's how I, you know, like, and it makes it easier in the long term, because once you start practicing every day with little tiny things like, oh, you know, I don't know, whatever, you're driving in the car and somebody cuts you off, you know, be like, God bless you, instead of like giving the finger, you know, it's like things like that will eventually, you know, broaden perspective, and really you see how everything is all connected, and pretty much that's what ascension is to me, that we're all connected, not only just, you know, people, but, you know, planets, the solar system, the galaxy. You know, it might sound cliche saying, oh, we're all one, but I mean, from an energetic perspective, point of view, you know, we're all one. We are all one. I mean, pretty much everything that exists in not only the universe, I mean, not only the solar system, but the universe is made out of the same, pretty much, DNA. You know, so it doesn't matter what we look like, you know, it's just that we're all the same, and that's what ascension is. That instead of believing all the, you know, separation that will be conditioned to accept without asking, you know, in our lives, because, you know, we're black and white and men and women and I don't know what, you know, realizing that, you know, that is not true. Actually, it's the opposite. So in fact, all human beings are women at first. We all come from women, so we have to be, you know, a woman in order, you know, to exist. You know, if you're not a woman inside of the womb, which is, you know, you have to be a woman, and then obviously as whatever the process is. So at one point we're all women, you know, and then everybody, you know, is a woman. When you're born, you're a woman or a man or a child. I mean, or a girl, but that pretty much tells me that, you know, we're all the same, even though, you know, I'm a man and you're a woman. You know, very early in our stages of birth, you know, we're all women. So, you know, just like a man is both a woman and a man, and so women are both a man, you know, women and men. So I mean, so that's how I understand, you know, oneness, and we all come from, you know, it's like a tree with different branches, you know, we all come from the same roots and so forth. So that's how I understand ascension. Sorry, I was just, I didn't mean to go.
No, that was great, and that was great. And I could expand on like 100 things that you just said there, but I don't want to. I want to let you guys continue to talk. And as Andy was talking, I remember going through this and being like, oh my gosh, these concepts are so big, and they're just like, oh, I have to process this and think about this and think about this, and it seems very overwhelming. But when you just surrender, you just realize that it's just natural. It's just organic. It's just how we should be thinking. It's just all of the stuff that's blocked us from that natural organic process of living. When you get into this, you're like, oh, yeah, like that feels right to me. That resonates with me. One thing that Andy said about ascension being more of the spiritual, more of the unseen. I mean, that is one thing, Beth and I talk about this all the time, is there's so many divisions in society right now that keep us separate, but really we all are all one. We are energetically and made up from little bits and pieces of the universe, every single one of us, but we create this separateness. And ascension is really going back to unity consciousness, really recognizing that we are all part of each other. And again, Andy brought up a really big concept, which I'm passionate about, is doing the mirror work with other human beings or other entities, where you see yourself in other people. That changes everything. When somebody's great, you see yourself in them. When somebody's neutral, you see yourself in that. When somebody's really complicated for you and a real jerk, you see yourself in that as well, and you recognize, they're mirroring something in me that I need to address. When you start to recognize every relationship as a lesson for yourself and not making it about them and me, that's separation. We're all learning from each other, right? But that's very hard to do when you're deep into the ego, or you've been hurt, or you have a lot of trauma. To see somebody who's triggering a trauma in you like crazy, and to not talk bad about them or shut them out, but instead to say, I bless you. You are the highest teacher for me right now because I'm struggling so much with what you're showing me. Thank you so much. It takes a very big person, psychologically and mentally, to get over themselves and to say, thank you for showing me that in myself. But that changes everything. That shifts wars. That shifts everything when we start to recognize that we really are all one, and that we're helping. Ram Dass has a famous quote that says, we are all just walking each other home. And when you actually really see that, your whole life changes. You have so much less frustration. Things make sense. Your purpose becomes more clear. But again, it is energetic and it is spiritual. And you have to take these leaps of faith to follow your connection and to follow what God is trying to show you and to source. You have to really get out of the box to follow that. But a lot of the work that it takes to continually follow that spiritual path is part of the physical too. Sometimes we do have to make physical changes in our environment, in our health, in our location, in our friends. Sometimes we do have to make physical changes to continue on the ascension process. And you're following your heart. You're not following some sort of map or plan that's laid out for you. You don't know where it's going. So you have to. It is just an unseen journey where your heart is literally guiding the way, and you have to have the courage to do that. And sometimes that means making physical changes, big physical changes. But they work together. They work in tandem. Again, like separating the physical from the spiritual is still separation consciousness. So one thing that I'm really passionate about right now in my life is bridging together the gap between science and spirituality. Medicine, traditional Western medicine, and spiritual healing. Again, bridging gaps, and that's exactly how I consider myself. If somebody were to say to me, what do you do in your life? I could very easily say, well, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a business owner, I could label myself in all different sorts of ways. But if somebody were really to say, what do you do? I would say, I'm a bridge. Now again, people could be like, well, she's really out there, I don't know what she means, she's a bridge, like what the heck does that mean? But that's exactly how I feel. I am a bridge for people to start to recognize that we need to unite and get rid of that separation consciousness. A bridge for people to come together and recognize that we all are one, and that you can have the best, most beautiful life you've ever desired, your highest potential life, if we just decondition. And that's like the part of the physical and spiritual work, is having that moment. What we've often talked about can be like the dark night of the soul, where we realize, oh my gosh, I've kind of been asleep to like reality here, and I need to shift my perception. I need to shift how I was taught. Again, we learn things growing up, we're conditioned through school, through religion, through whatever. So some of that may actually be blocking your full potential. Very easily I can bring up my father, who I love dearly, but so deeply conditioned in one aspect of his religion, where he's in a situation where he's so stuck, in a situation where he's so unhappy because he thinks that's what he needs to do to actually serve the Lord. And actually the Lord wants him to be free and to be happy and to break out of those chains and to live his highest potential. But there's this misconception and misnomer through what he's been taught that, well, if I get a divorce, I'll go to hell. And if I do this, so I better just stay and try to be miserable here. That's not really what God wants for you. He wants you to break free and to live your highest potential. And if he did do that, when we break free from those chains, we're more inspired, we're more happy, we're more of service. How much service can you really be of to somebody else when you're stressed, depressed, miserable, trying to cope with your day-to-day, and you're going to work and you hate your job? How much service are you really being to somebody else when you're miserable? None. So you have to break free from your own chains. And that's exactly what Andy said too. The work needs to start within. first. You can be of service to other people, but it is very true that you can only be of service to someone else as much as you're willing to be of service to yourself. So obviously we know this. You can only love someone else as much as you love yourself, right? But the issue is that you need to continually refine that and do the work. So if you want to be of big service in this world, you better be prepared to continue to do the self-work on yourself to make sure that you're clear and you're in right thinking and that you're not going into fear and lack and guilt and shame and all of the emotions that keep you stuck from really fully being of service in this world. In order to make big change, you got to be open. You got to be not afraid of what anybody is going to say. You got to really be open and willing to hold space for whatever comes your way. That's one thing that I have learned myself is I often tell people that I'm a recovering people pleaser like crazy. And I used to just limit myself because I wanted to just please everybody. I'm not serving anybody doing that. So now I'm at the place finally where I've broken free of my over care and concern about what other humans think of me. So I really have to be prepared almost for any kind of persecution, right? Think about like some of the ancient religious texts that talk about how these people were persecuted. People got killed for their belief systems. I mean, look at some of the really profound leaders we had, Gandhi, MLK, people who get killed for their belief system. But you have to be willing, if you're going to be of big service, to be like, look, this is the truth. And if you don't like the truth, I'm going to still speak my truth anyway. And I'm going to be willing to be persecuted and have people not like me or unfriend me or whatever because I just want to live in truth and I want to help everybody see their own divinity and truth. But some people don't. They're not prepared to be faced with themselves, right? They still want to blame other people for their problems and be in that victim mentality. So it's a big role to step into, to be your authentic self and to move up on this spiritual path. But it's totally worth it. And once you get a taste, because what happened to me when I started this process was I would be in my more authentic state, would be really joyous, and then I'd have people around me that would kind of suck me back into the 3D world and fear and, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that, and I don't know, maybe I won't be able to take care of myself. So I kind of bounced around a little bit. And to me, that has a lot to do with, I mean, I could go into the physical side of things as far as illness, that's a big passion of mine, but to me that explains a lot of the root cause behind what bipolarity is. It's living and feeling your authentic self and then being pulled back to your inauthentic self, and you're going like this back and forth all the time. I did that for a little while and I really was like, wow, this is very bipolar, and I have no bipolar history at all, but I was in my higher self and then in fear, and then in my higher self and trust, and then in fear, and I would bounce a little bit, and then finally I was like, I don't like this. When I'm in my heart and in trust and faith, it feels amazing. I'm so connected, I'm helping, I'm being of service. When I go into fear, I'm not doing anything for anybody. It feels terrible to me. Like the resonance, the energy, the frequency feels really terrible for me. I want to live in that state of higher vibration. So I had to make some physical changes or have some conversations with people, and again, some of your hardest lessons are your family. Some people are blessed to have a really amazing soul family. A lot of people aren't, and a lot of people learn a lot from the people closest to them. And I was one of those people. So I had to finally speak up for myself and get to the space where I'd say to my mother, my own mother, look, I'm really trying to stay in a higher frequency here. And I didn't go into all the terminology, but I'm really trying to live a joyous life. And if we connect, I need you to not be negative all the time. Or we can just not see each other. I needed to just lay it out there and say, this is how I'm now choosing to live my life. And either you're on board, if you really love me, you'll kind of respect that, or we're just going to have to not see each other as much because I don't want to keep going down, right? And over time, that has really shifted a lot, and she knows that when I come over, she's got to hold a space of higher energy, of positivity, or I'll just leave. She doesn't want me to leave. So she's actually almost being forced to change because of the love she has for me. So other people can be very inspiring for you, and sometimes people fall away, and sometimes people stay on board, and they kind of go through the process with you a little bit because they love you so much. That's really what unconditional love is. And this is one thing that I learned on this journey was, if there were people in my existence, friends, family, close family, who were not on board with me coming into my own divinity, then guess what? They didn't have unconditional love for me. Their love was conditional. It was based more upon what they were getting out of it than loving me unconditionally. So as I stepped into my authenticity, And people didn't like that in my life. Basically, I was pulling some sort of energy away from them that they were receiving from me, right? So I had to be willing to say, look, I'm willing to shift my circle of people to really find the people who love me unconditionally, because I know I am loving them unconditionally. And when I am loving someone else unconditionally and they are loving me conditionally, that's taking a lot of my energy. And they're using a lot of my energy to keep themselves in a vibration that's high, but not authentically for themselves. They're using my energy to stay up. And I had to stop that, you know?
So yeah, it's just, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
No,
you
go
first.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, we're all energy, and
That's
we
right.
all have an amazing light within ourselves. And what comes to mind is actually one of the poems I write, which kind of simplifies it. I am light. And we can fully embrace it, then we start to see it in everybody.
That's right.
Because they all have that light. So for me, I think if we can just discover that light and keep it simple, there's so many things going on in the world, so much minutia everywhere, that we can get bogged down in everything. But if we can just take a moment for ourselves every day, meditate, really go in deep, and I think once we connect to our inner self, which is the higher self, which is part of ascension, I would believe.
Yeah.
Once we can do that and we put that forth out into the world, then other people all of a sudden they feel comfortable around you. And then they start to want to discover their light. And I think by first ourselves, starting with ourselves, not even worrying about what anything else is going on.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the person who's negative around you or everything else that's going around. Just you yourself focus on being that light. And then by being that light, you give other people permission to share their light, because people want to share their light, but a lot of times they are afraid or they're closed off. But if you can open up your light, it just really allows them to share theirs. So I think it can be just so simple as that. I think it's just discovering your own light.
Yeah.
And how can we do that?
Yeah.
Through meditation, through calming ourselves. You know,
Yeah.
Esther Hicks, I don't know if anybody of you study Esther Hicks.
I think I'm gonna
Abraham, also known
Yes,
as Abraham.
yes. One of my favorite videos that she has is she's talking with Wayne Dyer, another great, if you don't know him, discover him. He's gone now, but his work lives on. But she talks about, she's having a conversation with him, and he's asking her, about manifesting, and if anybody you want to create your own dreams. One of the best ways is there's energy all around us. We've got our energy, we've got the energy of people who've passed on. All of that is still here, the seen and the unseen energy. So if you want to connect into that, think of when you get goosebumps and chills. Close your eyes for 1 second and just, for me, I practice kind of bringing it on. If you take a deep breath, sometimes you can just feel those chills. Do you know what I mean? Like the goosebumps, or when you're having a conversation with somebody and it's so amazing and you just get chills everywhere. It's that vibration.
Electrical impulse
Exactly.
of alignment.
Exactly. And Esther Hicks talks about this when she's channeling. They're saying, this is the energy that we're at. So, I have it right now. If you want to manifest something very quickly in your life, get to that energy, and then we can hear you better, or whatever the energy is that's helping you along your way.
Yeah.
So if you can stay in that state, oh my God, can you imagine the things that we can pull in and create? It's amazing. And it's obviously you can't stay in that state constantly, but you can take little moments throughout the day. I've been at parties already where I was I think we were talking about this last week, where you just get you're so on talking to people. Recognize when you're getting squashed. Go into the bathroom, sit on the toilet for a second and just breathe. Get that energy back, because that will allow other people to connect to you then.
One thing I want to emphasize about what you just said, and people ask me this all the time. Somebody asked me, I forget where I was or if any of you guys were here, but they're like, do you work to be in this state? And the issue was, yes, I still have to check my alignment every day. And that's what I do, like you said, Lynn, where if you're in an environment that you feel is shifting your energy frequency, to recognize that as soon as possible and then do what you can to get back in alignment, because once you start letting that go too long is when you go back into fear and doubt and lack, and you forget that you're your own co-creator in your world. So again, for me, every day, all right, is there a conversation I need to have? I don't wait on anything. Like if something energetically feels out of balance, I am on that right away. I don't say, well, let me sit and process it. It was a hard day yesterday. Let me have that conversation next week. I don't have time for that because that affects the work I do in the world. So yes, when you feel your energy frequency lowering, do something about it. But the issue is, as us here, as maybe potentially being these agents of change, these bridges for people, we have to teach people what it even feels like to know their own resonance. There are people who don't even know when they're out of balance. So what we do is we keep our own balance so we can share with them and teach them what resonance is. What does it feel like for you? When you're in alignment, what is that? Very simply, it's when you feel good. What people will say, well, what does it look like when I'm out of alignment? It's not complex. It's when you feel happy. We have to hold this space of that energy to be able to help others get there, right? So I totally agree with everything that you said. But there are people who need people to hold space for them and to teach them and to guide them. And you're right, the only way we can guide them is when we continue to do our own work and to stay in our own resonance and keep our vibration high.
And you're right, it is an up and down.
It's an up and down.
You do have to constantly keep yourself in check.
You do. You don't just get, in my opinion, if you were enlightened, you'd transcend. You'd be in the new earth. You wouldn't be here. So we're still human bodies.
You still be here, just nobody would see it.
Right. You're right. We would be translucent. Yeah, we'd still be here energetically.
I have to say, the more I get that meditation practice and I don't fall out of it, I find myself at that state much more consistent, and then you don't have to work as hard. It's when you fall out of that connecting time that you start being like, okay, now I have to really work at it.
And that's exactly, I want to emphasize on that, is you continue to refine and evolve. And it does at first seem like a lot of work to stay in a higher frequency because you need to realign your life, especially if you've incarnated into a difficult situation. Very many profound saints and healers in the world incarnated into very difficult families, had very severe illnesses, had very big traumas to overcome, so they could learn what that empathy is like, to overcome that, to be of greater service to other people. That's not everybody's journey, but that is a very common journey where you have to transcend a lot of your own inner stuff to be able to recognize that and help hold space for others in that space of transformation. But you're right, meditate. There are tools that will help to keep you in better vibration. Meditation, the best. Introspection, taking time for yourself, processing your feelings, all of these things are going to help you to stay in that frequency. And then you're right, once you commit to being in the higher vibration, it requires, now I don't want this to sound like it doesn't still require work. It does, and it requires a tremendous amount of work to get there. But there's less and less that you need to do externally to keep your vibration. So for me, I love meditating, I love practicing yoga, but I am in a state of constant awareness and meditation 24/7. That's just how I live my life now. I don't have to necessarily sit down and meditate. I can, and I love it. And if I allow myself to get out of balance, I will need to do that. But what's happened is now I recognize and I have that option. All right, Stephanie, if you overwork like this, do you realize you're going to go out of balance and you're going to have to make up for it the next day? And you're going to have to get a massage or do some extra yoga or do some meditation to get back into alignment. I don't not recognize when I'm getting out of alignment now. Do you know what I mean? It's like I have that conscious choice. All right, do you want to eat this pizza and do this because you know you're not going to feel well? And then it's my free will. Yeah, I want to do that. Or same emotionally. If I get into a fear, if something triggers me and I feel fear, my higher self talks to me and it says, all right, Stephanie, you know the real deal here, but do you want to feel sad and be in fear and eat that pint of ice cream and be there? Because that's a choice that you have to do that. Or do you want to just take a breath and get yourself back? That's your free will to be like, all right, I want to just sulk tonight and eat a pint of ice cream. Or know, all right, this pain is part of the journey. One thing that Beth and I have been talking about the past 2 days is the purpose in your pain. There is a purpose in everybody's pain, and a lot of times we mask it. And the cultural trend is to take medication. Not saying that's bad, because I have to take medication for my transplant every day, but we mask so much of the pain. And there are gems of lessons and enlightenment in your pain. It's a lesson. And a lot of times we want to avoid it, right? So again, that's your choice. Do you want to eat the ice cream? Do you want to be depressed? How long do you want to be depressed? It is actually a choice. But this is very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult. Yes, me too. I do too.
I think, the ascension, although it is spiritual, connecting or, reinforcing connection to source of God. I mean, we're all, very complicated, complex beings,
Yeah.
so,
With different blueprints.
right. But I'm trying to say that, there's the spiritual aspect, there's the physical aspect, there's the mental aspect, there's the emotional aspect. These
Yeah.
are all, they all have their equal, or they do the equal part when it comes to our, accessing or being in touch with our higher selves. So, all these things, they sort of like have to go, along with each other. You have to, they all have to be respected equally. Like you're doing meditation to connect to your higher self, meaning the spiritual level, but at the same time you have to practice your yoga, on the physical aspect of it. And on an emotional level, you could, when you're feeling down, for example, or you're feeling sad, you can listen to your favorite music, or read your favorite book, or write your favorite poetry, or go out and take shoot some pictures. So, and I think this is what makes it so difficult for a lot of people to, because you don't have to be on your mat all the time. You can be running, and you're connected to your higher self. You can be at the grocery store, and instead of buying, I don't want to again offend anyone, but instead of buying, like regular eggs, you can buy cage-free, organic,
That's a conscious choice.
pasture. Right.
Yeah.
So those are the conscious choices, the free will when it comes into play, to sort of like stay in the level of ascension.
Yeah.
Because again, it is multi levels. Again, physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental. If you're not mentally in your right state of mind, as they say, then you're not going to be able to make the right choice. And you're not going to be able to connect the right way with these people. And we all know what it feels like.
Yes.
We all know.
Yeah.
We've done this. So again, it's very, it's not just one thing. And for me, when I first started doing yoga, it was more like, okay, I haven't done my yoga today. I got to do my hour in the morning or in the afternoon or wherever it was. I didn't do this. But then all the other aspects of my life, were not,
Yes.
I was just doing them as regularly I would do them, because, I wasn't still connecting. Obviously with the food that was, easier because, once you start looking into this stuff, then you get to a lot of things that you shouldn't be doing, or I shouldn't be doing. But again, it was like the mental aspect of it, I wasn't there, so emotionally, like when you don't respect yourself, when you were like, why did you do that, and then you can't take that to other people, you're going to do the same with other people. You're going to, instead of being like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, you try it again next time, you'll be like, oh man, why'd you do that? So it's kind of like the same thing that you're treating yourself, you're treating others. So again, it's all these layers that have to kind of go together, because that is what our existence is. If we don't have all of these aspects sort of like match each other, then we're going to fall into a little.
You've just described perfectly multidimensionality, multi-dimensions, and being a multi-dimensional being. That's the thing. We have different fragments and sides of ourselves, and a lot of times as humans, we get very attached to bettering one aspect of our being, right? I'm going to get really into yoga, and now I'm a yogi. I did this. I'm a yogi. I'm all about yoga. That's one of many aspects of who I am as a soul that's going to give me enlightenment. Or I'm really going to get really fit. And people make their whole life about their body. And they get really, really fit, but their mental, emotional, etheric, all their other bodies are not in balance. So it's like you have to take those layers, those different dimensions of who you are as a soul. You are physical, you are emotional, you're mental, you're etheric, you're astral. You've got all of these bodies. And how do I defragment all of those separate sides of me and pull myself back into one integrated human being? And you do that by being conscious in every aspect of your life, right? Not just physically, but how I shower, what I buy, how I speak to other people, how I speak to myself, how I take care of my physical body. It all is equally as important. That's the greater aspect. Everything you do with awareness, everything, from how you tie your shoes to your thoughts. That is really enlightenment. That's moving towards enlightenment. Is
one thing I
that?
want to say about that is that you cannot blame yourself for what it is that you did at a certain low point.
Right,
You're
right.
not feeling mentally there. You're tired. You had a lot of work the night before. Or you went out, or you slept late, or whatever, and then you just wake up all like foggy and everything like that. A lot of these things have to do with how we were brought up and stuff like that. So you can't like blame yourself
Right.
or others, maybe your parents, whoever had the most influence in your lives. Because it's like as somebody said, if you take a little baby, so you put it in a crib, and in this crib you put an apple and a bunny. The baby is going to eat the apple and play with the bunny. It's not going to eat the bunny and play with the apple. That meaning that like we all start from love, and we all start from this compassionate
Right.
unconditional love being. We don't know black and white or any of this stuff. All this stuff has been taught to us, from our society, from our parents and schooling and stuff like that. So I think it's very important to me that when I say something to myself that it's demeaning or it's just not my fault. It's just because I bought into these things throughout my life, and that's why I feel this way. Like this condition, this program. It's not that we are bad people. You see people
Right.
out there on TV that doing bad stuff or whatever it may be. It's not because they are evil. It's because throughout their lives something has happened, or many things might have happened to get this person to this point that
Right.
he acted it out or manifested this
Right.
whatever it is that was going on with him.
The pain that would be within, maybe. Like that's how I see it. It's
Yeah.
like if something's
Whatever.
happening that's really disturbing, like instead of me prosecuting that person, I tend to more or less see the soul and think like,
Right.
wow, there must be a lot of conditioning and pain in there for that person to react that
Right.
way.
So what I'm saying is that it's if something is alright and I made a bad choice. Well,
Gotta let
it's
it
not a
go.
bad choice. It's just another lesson. It's
Yep.
not.
Yep.
It's not because I am stupid or unintelligent or uncompassionate.
Or not
Or
spiritually
not
awake,
able to
whatever.
love people or stuff like that. Just because it's actually the quite opposite. I am all these things, and the reason why I'm starting to see or feel all these disconnections is because who I am originally, or who I'll always be, and who everybody
Right.
is this unconditional love, and it just doesn't. The reason why it doesn't feel right, I'm saying, when you make it, is because you're not aligning to your higher self.
Right.
But it's not because I am stupid or I'm not incapable or unwilling to do this thing. It's just because I have to overcome this conditioning program.
And we're still human.
The human condition.
We're still human.
Non-physical, or we're non-physical beings living in
Right.
this physical
Right.
body. So when you make a mistake, or which you think is a mistake, probably isn't a mistake.
No, yeah.
But when you do something that you kind of beat yourself up for, if you can just say, oh, this physical body, I'm like in this human condition right now, like I just
We
have
are
to forgive
imperfect.
myself
Yeah.
for it, because you
Right.
can't help it sometimes, because your non-physical being wants to just shine and do,
Right.
be
And I think
free,
you're right,
but you
Lynn.
have these
I don't think
concerns
there's-
that we can't help.
Yeah, I don't think there is a mistake. That's the
There
thing. It
isn't. Right.
feels like we've
It
made a
feels
mistake.
like, but it's
Or it
not.
feels like we
We
want to
should learn from it.
self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Right, right. As long as you can sit and say, and sometimes there's a greater reason behind the mistake when we
Yeah,
see
there's
with our
lessons to
eyes.
learn.
Maybe somebody else is seeing something within us that they needed to learn. It's always so much of a bigger picture. But it's very easy to self-sabotage and say, well, I'm not being really spiritually awake today and I didn't do it right. Like, it's easy to do that, but there is a greater reason to why we have moments of falling a little short, and it's okay.
And
Because
it's
we're
this
human.
understanding of people struggling with the same issues.
Yeah.
If we
Exactly.
didn't go through those struggles, then how
Yeah.
would we understand?
Right.
Yeah.
When my kids, when the girls were younger and they used to get like, they had a problem with, someone in school or whatever, so they used to come home, such and such was, being a bully or something, and I'd say, well, I wonder what's going on in the world.
Right, right.
I don't know, you don't know what's going on.
Right.
And, they'd be like, Mom, they'd get mad at me.
Right.
And now I think they're getting, what I was trying to teach them is like, don't judge them, like don't be so quick to like jump on, because you don't know what's going on.
Right.
Their little world, their family. But now they're not so quick to like, jump on someone and be so judgmental or so, because now they're not, being so quick because you just don't know what they're suffering
Exactly.
from. Because
And I
I
think
feel like that's so important.
It is. And a big thing that I want to mention too, that I think sometimes we can get caught up on, is that the soul knows no age in the physical body. And I think sometimes that people think, oh, well, I'm older, or why am I just coming to this information now, and I should know more at my age. The soul is the soul. The soul has its own age. And, I've met people who are in their 80s and, still just coming to this information. And then I've met people who are 12 and who seem completely aware to this information. So I think that's one thing too. Sometimes we think life is more of a linear process depending on our age or our experience. The soul knows no physical body's age. So we have to just be really open to our experiences and how we're learning and when we maybe potentially fall short. And it's all part of the divine process to have no judgment on ourselves. You know what I mean? But it's hard not to do that when you're on this path, to be like, oh, I could have done better and I know better and I've done that to myself, but you got to let it go. And I know I went through this stage where I was like, how do I kind of fix, or how do I level out these peaks and valleys in my spiritual progress? I'm kind of feeling like one day it's really great and then I'm kind of down here. And then I realized it's all part of the journey, and that when sometimes I feel like I'm not evolving as much as I'd like to evolve, there's a purpose in that too. Maybe I'm processing some information. Maybe I'm trying to figure something out within. There's a purpose in the valley.
I have to read something really fast.
Okay.
I just want to say, I think, one of the reasons it's just, again, when we go through our stages in our life, you go to school or you're at home or wherever your social circles is, circle, not circus.
That could be a circus.
Yeah, circus. Well, I was just want to say that there's always expectations. When you go to school, then you're expected to do well. Have good grades, whatever that means. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're learning something. It just means that you're expected to do above, A or B or whatever that is. Or when you go to your social circles, you hang out with your friends. Then you're expected. There's this collective consciousness of that circle that you're expected to live up to. So I think those ups and lows, as far as individually speaking, have to do more with those expectations that we have set for ourselves. And the only reason why we have set expectations is because we were taught to set expectations.
Right.
We're all being like, oh, you're going to start here, and then the goal is over here. So you're expected to do this, whatever this thing is, this line, this path. And so, again, it's because of that conditioning again that it still has sort of like those deep roots, obviously, because it's all we have known in our lives. So it's kind of like hard to, it's kind of like pulling a carpet from under you. You don't know where to start. And for a lot of people like us, for example, we have nobody that taught us that. We had to go on our own and learn it and make our own mistakes and be the yogi or be the whoever, the working out every day, or be some super healthy person. But again, it comes because we have been conditioned, we've been programmed that you need expectations. You need to have a starting point, you need to have an ending point.
Right.
If you don't have that, then and so those are highs and lows that come from that expectation that we have set now for ourselves, which is great. But again, it should be not an expectation, which is more like a growing
journey.
But in the sense of instead of saying, oh, in 5 years I'm going to be here, as far as like with my yoga, for example, or with whatever, journey you're on, your path, you can say, I'm going to do my best, instead of setting expectations, because expectations can be very disappointing and frustrating, because, starting a job, and you're like, oh, I was hoping this job is going to be so great, and it's going to make so much money, and this and that, but then it turns out that, okay, you're making the money, but the job is not great. The people are not, you're not connected to them as well as you thought you were going to. And that's because you're setting that expectation again. So once you eliminate the expectation,
you can let God take over and give you what you really need.
Well, that goes to being connected to your higher self. Once you're able to sort of live the daily life that you're talking about, then yes, you won't have to set expectations anymore. You'll be living in the present.
You'll trust that whatever you feel is best for you might not actually be what's best for you. That there is a higher, more divine plan.
Right.
You're
So
totally
as long as
right.
you're being present, meaning that as long as you're feeling good about what it is that's going on in your head or in your heart or your body physically is feeling okay, then you're in the present. Then you're not setting up those expectations. You're not, you're not only setting space for yourself, you're setting space for other people. Because if you go into a new work environment, then you're like, oh, I met this person that day, she seems so great, but then you met them and then you're like, they're not great at all. So you're setting up yourself, you're setting this bar, this line.
Yeah.
That you're sort of like making other people live up to, which is not fair, because if you're, it's the same as you're doing for yourself. You're setting a bar for other people, to live up to, but these people are not on the same level as you are. Or these people are going through, things in their lives that are, traumatic, and you cannot relate to them. So you're setting a bar not only for yourself, but for them, which is completely wrong.
And then I
unfair.
think you block off future energetic exchange when you cut somebody off for whatever reason. You're blocking yourself off from learning an experience when you say, oh no, that person didn't, or they didn't live up to my expectation, I'm blocking that off.
Right,
But there could be some valuable information that you're supposed to hear.
Yeah, so it all goes as far as from my understanding, it goes to the expectations and not being in the present. Like we have our imagination and our dreams and our feelings, and emotions, and they all carry us everywhere. We all know what it's like, and that's great. It's awesome to do that, but as long as there's no expectations from what the outcome of it is going to be, or what you're going to get out of it, or I don't know how to put it in. But I think that's where it all comes from, being able to be in the present and expecting things from yourself first, obviously, and then from other people as well.
Yeah.
Well, I have something that kind of describes it, and something I wrote, because I'll sit and I contemplate things, and sometimes, I guess if I meditate, it's the higher self, or I'll hear it and I'll just write. And so when I write, I don't change a word I write. It's sort of I write as it comes out, and that's how it stays. And I was contemplating perspective, and it's called changing perspectives. Life is a series of starting and restarting, inventing and reinventing, learning and relearning. The cycle never ends. Is that our purpose? To spin in the wheel of life, never accomplishing anything? I guess as the wheel turns, it does move forward. We, on a human level, may think we are not progressing, but on a soul level, we are always progressing. Every human step backwards is actually your soul stepping forward. We need to fall to get up. We need to recognize unhappiness to understand happiness. Life is always giving us new perspectives so that we can recognize that which we want. We all have a choice in the direction we let our heart go. It is our constantly changing perspectives that gives us the understanding we need to move forward with certainty. Listen, look, and become aware of the constantly changing perspectives in your life. Learn to flow with that change, and the choices you make will be the right ones for that moment.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So it kind of described, that's why I was like, I just went through contemplating all that.
Yeah. So, the big question in my mind is, how do we help people understand this? Because it's easy for us to sit here and have this conversation. But my mission is, how do we get this information and really penetrate the collective more? And let them feel the safety. We have to create these spaces of vulnerability and communication and open dialogue without judgment. Like, that's my mission. is to like, how do we do this more in the world and help people?
Lynn, you're so wise.
Yeah.
What do you think? She's so wise. She's amazing.
Well, I think what I've learned is that if I live an authentic life, then it sort of rubs off other people.
Yeah.
So you really don't have to advertise much
Mm-hmm.
because they find peace being around you because you're honest. You're honest. You're
Mhm.
honest about things.
Mm-hmm.
And you see things. I see things clearly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that just makes people more open.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Living authentically is always, and that's the thing, we've all talked about this and we all know this, is that it 100% starts within. There's nothing outside of yourself that can help inspire other people besides you just being your authentic self. Like
Yeah.
that's very important. And a lot of people I think are constantly looking and searching and seeking externally. Not that external modalities don't help, they do, but really the answers are truly within. You know, so it's this constant seeking and searching for something outside of myself that's going to help me and fulfill me and bring me more enlightenment. The true authenticity is only found within when you decondition yourself from the programming. There's nothing outside of you that's going to help you become authentic.
Yeah.
You know, it's you saying what is inauthentic about my already nature of being authentic. That's the upside down again.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
That's
like
right.
I'm already
That's right.
a divine, authentic, perfect soul. I just forgot.
What am I doing
It-
that's not authentic to me?
It's like in the
Yeah,
Bible.
that's great.
We're born into sin, so to speak. We're born into the veil of illusion. We're already perfect. It's just we have to remember, wake up and remember, and then say, oh, now I have to just cut away what's been in my way, what I've been taught that's not authentically me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult, I mean, to approach people with that. I mean, the thing is, you just have to let people, you know, come to you and feel in a way, like today, for example, you know, like, you know, again, you know, I've been doing, like, following up with, you know, this energetically speaking, you know, what's going on in the last few years and what's going to happen in the future. But, you know, it was still, you know, a little bit, you know, not awkward, but I was a little bit nervous coming here, you know, because I didn't, you know, so although I am sort of, quote unquote, in the know, you know, I was still a little bit nervous about coming here today because,
You didn't know what you were getting
because-
into.
so,
You're going someplace store.
yeah, so I mean, yeah, you have to be.
You must have anything to think about.
So for a lot of people, it's very, you know, nerve-wracking, and you know, sometimes they just think this is baloney, and they don't know, they don't care about
Yeah.
going to. I mean, they're so entrenched in the, you know, material world.
The
that,
everyday living.
You know, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, again, we're all in different paths and different, you know, levels of whatever. But I mean, you know, it's. I mean, I think people. I mean, like I noticed the difference between like recently and maybe like a year or two ago, as far as like approaching people and being able to. You know, just say what you have to say, not necessarily, you know, being like all, you know, like conspiracy theory or anything like that, but just being able to have your own, hold your own space. You know, people that have become more easier in a way to deal with in that aspect. You know, before they would jump, you know, as soon as they see smoke, you know, then just now they're more like, oh, you know, there's a little bit of fire going on over there, but I think it's okay for right now. So, you know, people are changing, you know, obviously you can't resist to what is coming to this planet or to our solar system, generally speaking. The energies that are coming in are, I mean, everybody is feeling them. They're not aware of them, they're not conscious of them, they don't know whether they have headaches or why they can't sleep at night, you know, or why, you know. But, you know, they, deep down inside, they're starting to be, I guess the word would be more awake or more in touch with themselves and sort of like the environment. Because, I mean, pretty much, although we're all on different levels, pretty much everybody is getting the same dose of energy coming.
Right, right.
So, I mean, in a way, people are getting a little bit more easier to deal with, and, you know, they're not. But it's still, you know, obviously a few years compared to, you know, thousands, even 50 or 40 years is a big difference. Like, it's not comparable to them. But I mean, you know, as long as you try to make the difference between conditioned and authentic or natural or pure or whatever, however you want to name it. I think that could be like a good place. But the problem is that a lot of people think that this is free will, and the reason why I did that is because I wanted to do it, not because my dad told me to or my mom wanted me to do it. So there's this.
Let's talk about that. Let's go into our opinions, because I'm sure we all have one, on the idea of fate, destiny, and free will.
Well, I mean, again, it's very difficult to, from a conditional point of view. We're kind of like, we made everybody to fit a model. We're pretty much, through schooling or whatever social circles we've all, we have this mold and everybody has to fit it. If you don't fit it, then you don't belong. And a lot of people, a lot of people, with our friends and families, or we've heard of them, we might be ones, like I definitely felt like I've been like the black sheep in a good way of wherever social circles, family, or anything like that. I was always the one who was different, always the one who was thinking differently and feeling differently and saying different things and seeing the other side of things. There's always 50-50 chance, is it going to go good or going to go bad? So why do you want to focus on the bad side when you can be just equally, like the bad? Like if you're going
Do
to
you
go.
look at yourself as being different as a bad thing or a good
Oh no,
thing?
that's what I said. It's a black sheep,
Yeah.
but in a good way, because
Yeah.
I was always trying to my friends be like, but this is going to happen. Okay, that can happen, but there's a 50-50 chance that the good thing can happen
Right.
also. Why do you choose to focus on the 50-50, on the bad 50?
Glass half empty.
Yeah. So I mean, when you have an equal chance of something coming, why shouldn't you say, I'll be excited about? Oh yeah, this can happen. This could be great. Oh yeah, there's a chance of that could happen also, but whatever, if it happens, it happens. But again, there's all this conditioning that that you always have to be safe and be prepared, and because you never know what's going to happen. So that is that aspect of it, and then for a lot of people, they just say I don't care, I don't, so they choose the defiant mode, not necessarily the authentic mode. They hear their calling within themselves, but they don't know how to translate it. So they're like, I don't care about you. I don't care about where I work or what I do. I just want to do my own thing. And that sometimes kind of snowballs and goes and totally become addicted to things. But it's you have to have you have to be it's very difficult to do the line thing where and again it's because of the expectations that we even though you don't fit the mold, that that you've seen it all, you'd be like I don't want to work in an office, I don't want to do this. Not that there's anything wrong with working in an office, but like even you still setting expectations for yourself because you want those things that come from within you to flourish and to nurture them and to do whatever it is that they want you to do. And so it's very difficult when you have both, you've seen both, you're aware of both, you're conscious of both worlds, 3D or conditioned, the program, the illusion, and also what's within you, your potential. But still, if you're not practicing all the different levels of your existence, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, you're trying to keep yourself in the peaceful, relaxed, happy
Comfort zone.
comfort
In a
zone
way.
is kind of like very, but I mean, I like to break down to I'm peaceful. There's nothing going on in my mind right now. I have no haves to do, or I need to do, or should do, or must do, and that's pretty much how I'm trying to live my life. I wake up, I have to make coffee. That has to be done every day. There's nothing, that's an expectation. But I mean, then after that, if I don't have to go to work or do anything, then I just try to clear my mind as much as I can and be as peaceful or positive, but positive in the sense of like peaceful, where there's no, things that
Like almost like a forceful energy that you have to do something.
right, that you have to think about something or that I have to feel about something,
Yeah, because that's what we do. Like, oh, I have to do this. Oh, I should do this today. And we do things that we don't actually want to do. Oh, I really should do this today. I should do this. I have to go here, and I have to make. So we're doing all of these things that we may not actually want to do.
Right. So I try to keep myself as like clear-minded and clear-hearted, if I can say, as possible. Although like I'm Gilspe and I have kids. Actually, I have 2 kids that live in Pittsburgh, so I like to see them more. But like try to keep as much of that. Obviously, as be as peaceful and relaxed with who I am and where I am at this point, and be as much in the present, meaning to give value to every moment of my life, whether I'm at home or outside, and just take that single moment of appreciation to be like, oh, it's cold today, but the sun's shining. It's nice. It feels good right now walking, or driving, or just instead of being, oh, I've been driving so long, the back hurts. Maybe like being
Shift your focus.
yeah, just to be as that's keeps you above the you're not drowning. You're swimming. As long as you're trying to get that being as much in the moment as possible. As like, oh, I have to go to the groceries. Just be like, oh, it's a nice day walking. Eventually get the groceries. At some point.
Right.
So
So
that's
Andy,
how
let me
it's for
ask
me.
you a question.
Yes.
First of all, it's beautiful, and we're lucky to always seem to have at least one male in the groups that we
Oh,
have,
nice.
which is great. Sometimes more, but it's always nice to have a collective male energy in the space. But you seem very balanced between your male and your female polarities. How did you get to that space? Was there something that happened, or some sort of event or catalyst or something in your experience that kind of like broke you open to this kind of knowledge and this real balancing between the polarities and the honoring of the masculine and feminine and just your vision here?
Well, I mean, I'm Albanian, so I grew up in Albania. I came here when I was 18 years old. You probably don't know anything about Albania. Albania is a very tiny country right above Greece. It's on the Adriatic. It's right across if you go east on the Adriatic from Italy. That's like Albania is the first place where you would stop. I say that because it's very, now that generally speaking our society is now, but very patriarchal. I mean, it's a predominantly Muslim country as well, which doesn't have anything to do with like now that women walk around, dressed up, that's not the case. But that was kind of like so say for example, there's a wedding, like all the women would go and they used to, not anymore, but they have their own room, all table, and all men have their own room, their own table. Obviously, but again, that's kind of like, there's always a division of like the men supposed to be.
So you are very much not like that. Did you
Well,
grow
I mean,
up in a
I
family
always grew
like
up with
that?
that, so that always impressed me, and then when I started, getting more into like yoga and spirituality and I mean, I've always been curious by nature, so I always, I read about how it used to be, the society that is today. It's not, it used to be more matriarchal back in the day, more, women, in charge, if lack of a better word. But I mean, doing this kind of stuff, it's kind of like, and then as I said earlier, we're all women first. Like if you're in the womb, you have to be a woman because you're inside the body of a woman. So that's the only way for. And then obviously later, depending on what you're. So putting all these things together, it's kind of like, but and I've always been an open-minded person, so I think that's probably like the first thing that I never, I was always, looking at the other side of the coin, if you will, so just so that I can get the perspective on both sides.
Right.
But it's very difficult. I mean, very difficult. I shouldn't say difficult. I should say challenging. Obviously to overcome the conditioning and the programming that we go through.
Do you see in the collective right now this shift in the patriarchal energy, obviously? This shift into more of the divine feminine rising, so to speak, and not just women, but in men as well? Do you see this with people that you're around, where men are getting more in touch with this balancing of energies? Are you seeing that or not as a man?
Well, I mean, I see a lot of men that have, man buns, so I guess like mine. So I guess-
Did you say man buns?
Man
Well, I guess, that
Oh.
like long hair, I guess. But I've noticed that more, lately. But I guess there would be sort of like, because I mean, again, I'm not judging, but I feel how people or men usually react to, when I'm around, or just acting how I act or what I look like. So as far as like, on the physical aspect, I mean, I can see that more men are, getting more in touch with their feminine side.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's part of the, also of the whole, energetic thing
Shift.
that is happening, shift that is happening.
Mm-hmm.
As the veil is coming down, we're getting to see more aspects of ourselves
Mhm.
than we were conditioned to, or used to before, regardless of who we are, men or women. I'm sure a lot of women are getting more in touch with their masculine
Right.
side as well.
Right. And hopefully their balanced masculine side, because I think we went into that a little bit as well, where we, maybe felt oppressed as females for a very long time. So we
Oh, sure.
polarized into a very imbalanced masculine energy, where it was more like the Helen Reddy, I don't need a man, I have this myself, I can do it. It was imbalanced. So I'm hoping now, as men are trying to find more of their balance with their feminine polarity, that females are trying to find their true feminine power.
Yeah, I can say that, I guess, I'm kind of like a lazy person, so I'm trying to find the most efficient, the easiest way to do things, and being in denial for me, it's the complete opposite of that. Denying that we all are men and women at the same time, it's very counterproductive.
Right, right.
You're just going against nature, and
Right.
nobody wins, when it comes to that. So for me,
Right.
it was very, it was very easy to accept that, I'm just as much a woman
We're
as
both.
a man.
Yeah.
So I'm serving a function at this point in my life, or in this incarnation, if you will, depending on what you believe, as a male, as a masculine energy. But that doesn't mean that I didn't incarnate before as a feminine
Right,
energy, or so all these things, sort of put it together, help me, like live this perspective. It has been quite challenging, especially with families and friends. But again, we're all on a path, and we all see things from our different levels that we're in. Some people have had a lot more to deal with than other people.
Right.
So their journey, is different, maybe more challenging. But it's when it comes down to this practice, obviously.
Yeah.
Once you realize, again, it depends on who you are. I was very open-minded. I was always into art and music and stuff like that. I had both of, when I was growing up, male or boys and girls friends, so I wasn't, but, sometimes when somebody overemphasizes one aspect of it, you're wondering why he's not doing the same for the other side, like why is so that always has been kind of like a little question mark for me, like why, so it takes a lot of integration, obviously,
Yeah. Relationships are a whole other.
Being able, I mean, because one thing, when you first asked my question, I was thinking of like how men talk about women, or how, when, you have, like men friends, male friends, and how they all act with each other, when it comes to talking about women, generally speaking, and it will come off as not very respectful or derogatory, or depending on who they're talking about, if it's like, somebody they work with, but I mean, I don't know exactly how women talk in their social circles, among women about men, But, like generally speaking, like men will have this very, masculine, point of view, perspective. Not very respectfully, although, they try to act so respectfully, and so that was the first thing that I thought of, was just like the whole concept of talking about women in a certain way or seeing them as however, the
I think the energy
masculine
too.
energy sees, or being programmed or conditioned to see, in a way, the women are all supposed to do certain things or be certain
Right.
places. So
But
that
I
is,
think collectively, like when we get masses of energy together, it can amplify, right? So I think, were we talking about this?
I was just kind of having an epiphany, you were asking him about, your past and how you came to all this, and I think that would be a good question for all of us to ask ourselves, like what was the moment that sparked us, like, to discover our spirituality? Because I
Right.
think if we can discover what that was, that's something that we can take and put out in the world as well. Like, was it
Right.
a person that inspired you? Was it, you said you discovered it a little bit through yoga, but how did you come to that? Like, what were those influences that influenced us to
Right.
even become
Because there's
intrigued by
many,
it?
but usually
Because
there are some notable ones
Yeah.
that can
Or what
somehow.
turned you off.
Or,
Yeah.
that's true.
Yeah.
Or what really.
Or what switched
set-
you off,
Yeah,
yeah.
what switched you off to
Yeah.
something.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Me?
Yeah.
Um,
And what you mean?
well, it seems obvious to me, listening to him, that there was some catalytic, or you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I think that's why we're all here, is there's a
Yeah.
particular something that happens to you that redirects your life.
right.
And because let's face it, a lot of people's lives are very uncomplicated. And I look at them and I go, oh, that's nice. Next time around, I'm signing up for that one. Because this one was way too hard. But, so I think that there must have been something very dramatic that you aren't having the bullshit that has made your path go like this.
Well, I think, I've always been the person who's always looked at many things, that lead to one place, so I like to think of it as, throughout my life growing up, and my adult life as well, that there's been like certain steps or stages, to sort of like
Yeah.
set me up for this right now. So, and that's why I started with my, upbringing, living in a very patriarchal society, and then, the social circles, how, generally speaking, like men will talk about women, and, then to the spirituality thing. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was when my daughter was born, it was about 7 years ago, that kind of like, being more in touch or being, closer to, sort of like to I don't know, like a pure female or a feminine energy,
Sure.
like my daughter, like when she was first born, for example, I was living with a mother at the time, obviously, there was that influence as well, but, again, like, when it comes to men and women, we're both conditioned,
Yeah.
for some people it's irreparable, so although I was living with her and she gave me a lot of support and stuff like that, but then maybe it was this kind of like because kids are generally speaking, as far as their energy, they're unconditional and very
Right.
very pure, and so maybe it was that kind of like sort of made this
I can see what you're saying, Andy, and I think that everybody, in my opinion, everybody has a different process coming to spirit or shifting away from spirit, and some people are born. Again, we all incarnate into different lifetimes as different beings and different souls from other people's lifetimes that they're incarnated into. We're all, again, walking each other home, but still incarnating into different circumstances and scenarios. And I have seen people start to awaken through different means that are very, very specific. For myself, I had several traumas throughout my childhood that started me on the process. I got into yoga and meditation very early. That started me on the continued refining my process. And then for me personally, I did have a major catalytic event in 2015 that then...
What transplant do you have?
I have had 2 kidney transplants. Yeah, so one in 2005 and one just a year ago. Yep. So there were things that had me on the journey, and the yoga and the spirituality and the fact that when I was really ill, I couldn't practice yoga, so I had to visualize it and really go within. There were different things that happened on my journey, but then in 2015, and this was not health related at all, there was another catalytic experience through another human being that really just blew me open very, very quickly, very, very rapidly. But I realized everybody comes to this through their own unique method and modality, whether that be just strictly long periods of meditation or going on a retreat or having a life or death experience or losing somebody or divorcing. Everybody can come to this information differently. You know, and I think for some people it is just a progression of things that keep awakening, or just one big thing and it just gets them there, you know. So I think everybody's really unique and
For
different.
some, never.
You're right. In this lifetime, they will do it eventually.
Eventually. But,
Right, yeah.
And also too, that a lot of times you meet very young souls who don't really have any, let's say, depth,
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
haven't had any experiences. And then
Right.
you have a child who comes into this world who, at one, has a comedic timing, or two, they've been around many lifetimes before.
right.
And, then you have that.
Yeah.
So you have all things.
That's the thing with this particular incarnation, this life that we're living and understanding right now, is that this is just one of many. But we get very caught up in the 3D physical tangible world right here and right now, and we get very, obviously things become very important when they're right in front of us tangibly, but when we realize that this is just one of many continuous lifetimes, things become much more vast, and you start to, you maybe pull back on some of the control and fear and, well, what if I don't do this in this lifetime, or what if this doesn't happen in this lifetime, or what if this does happen in this lifetime? Don't worry, it's all continuous, but it's very hard to not attach to just what we have right now in front of us. But this is just a very small part of all that is.